Welcome to Wembley Stadium, the home of English football and the starting point for a brand new series where over the next few videos I will take you to all 20 Premier League clubs' home stadiums using only trains. I mean, how hard can it be? Surely it won't be that hard, right?
Today's trip starts at Wembley Park Station. Of the 3 stations in the Wembley area, this one is not only closest to the stadium, but also the biggest. It has plenty of fare gates to cater to all the traveling crowds, as well as 6 platforms serving both the Metropolitan and Jubilee lines of the London Underground. I was hoping to get on the Metropolitan line, as it is a little bit faster. But unfortunately, when I got on my Metline train, they announced that it was terminating, and instead I had to get on the Jubilee, which is a little bit slower, and that meant I had to change my plans. Okay, I was hoping it wouldn't be that slow. For this stretch between Wembley Park and Finchley Road, the Metropolitan line only stops at those 2 places, whereas the Jubilee line stops at all sorts of stations in between. This includes West Hampstead, which is right here.
The Jubilee sound when it starts up is always beautiful. But yeah, change of plans. Fortunately, Metline had an issue, so I'm here at West Hampstead. I'm going to get on the overground here and take a different route to get to the first stadium. All right, thankfully the 2 stations are just a couple minutes walk from each other, so I'll be able to get on the overground really soon. And hopefully we will hit our first stadium.
Our second train of the day is on the London Overground, namely the Maltby line, which I am taking up towards Stratford. This is my most frequently used of the 6 overground lines, and while it usually uses Class 378s these days, I was lucky to catch 2 710s arriving at the same time. This section of the line between Willesden Junction and Stratford runs a total of 8 trains per hour in each direction, making it a very frequent suburban service. Here at Gospel Oak, you can connect onto the Suffragette line, which goes towards Barking, but we're continuing on, where I'm going to be getting off at one of the biggest stations outside of Zone 1 in London, Highbury and Islington. Highbury being a part of the borough of Islington, and also the name of Arsenal's former stadium.
All right, Highbury and Islington. This is quite a major non-Zone 1 transfer station. You got the Overground, the Tube, but we're not going for either of those. I'm going to show you the Northern City line.
This is a Victoria Line platform at Highbury and Islington, where trains come in every couple of minutes. But across the platform is the much less frequent Northern City line, although it still runs at every 15 minutes. This line is sometimes considered to be London's lost tube line. It was originally part of the tube network, but today it has services on Great Northern that run in from Moorgate. It is a really fascinating line, and I will have to give it a full tour at some future point. But for now, here comes my Great Northern Class 717, which I'm going to take just 1 stop north to get to the Emirates Stadium.
This is Jubilee Park.
All right, that's Drayton Park, Northern City line. I definitely have to come back and check out that line in more depth a little bit later. Turns out they actually closed that station before and after matches to help ease overcrowding. So it is quite a small station. I can imagine it would probably have a lot of crunches. It is also the closest one to the stadium. However, Highbury and Islington, we just were there. It's also in walking distance. And there are several other Piccadilly and Victoria line stations that probably get used more often. But we're here. There we go, the first stadium of our little stadium tour. So yeah, this is the Emirates Stadium, home of Arsenal's men's team, and of course, as of this season, Arsenal's women's team play all their home games here as well. Champions League winners, of course. Great season for them. Hopefully the men's team can match them in terms of actually winning a trophy this time around. But yeah, that is 1 down, 19 to go. So for every stadium that we visit in this series, I'll give it a score out of 10 for how easy it is to get the train to the stadium. And already the Emirates sets a pretty high bar. There's lots of different stations near the stadium. The one closest to the stadium obviously gets closed on match days, but that's because it's really small. I think the fact that there isn't one centralized station does help to ease the crowds, but there are ways that they can be viewed as a potential disadvantage because aside from Drayton Park, all of them do require a bit of a walk. So yeah, but it's still very easy to get here by train. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. So now let's get over to Arsenal's biggest rivals.
Here at Arsenal Tube Station, the walkway down to the platforms is separated so that on football match days, those that are just using the station normally and those that are coming to watch a game can be separated. Arsenal's on the Piccadilly line, which I'm just taking one stop north to Finsbury Park. And yet another cross-platform transfer for the Victoria line can be found here at Finsbury Park, which is very useful because that's exactly where I need to go next. The Victoria line was built with so many cross-platform transfers in mind, and the two that we just saw at Highbury and Islington and Finsbury Park are just a couple of them. I also took the Victoria line just one stop to Seven Sisters, where I'm connecting onto my second overground line of the day, the Weaver line, also known as the Lee Valley lines. It runs at a 15-minute frequency, and I had just about missed the train that I would have liked to get, so I had to wait for quite a long time. But once I got on board, I headed north, just a few stops, to White Hart Lane, and the stadium is actually visible on your way there.
Okay, White Hart Lane finally made it. And the stadium is quite literally the next block down. That's lovely. All right, the next train going back is in 7 minutes, and I would like to make it. And there it is, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Might have a new name by the time this video comes out though. But yeah, it's absolutely stunning building. And they're never gonna let you forget that they finally won a trophy. As they should always bask in their glory. I hear they got a nice cheese room in there. Don't have to worry about that anymore.
I ummed and awed over what to give Spurs between two numbers that are pretty funny right now if I say them next to each other, so I won't say them. But in the end, I decided to give them the higher number, even though the Weaver line is not the most frequent. It does have good connections to other lines at places like Seven Sisters and Liverpool Street, of course. So yeah, 7 out of 10 for Spurs.
Alright, here's Hackney Downs, and here comes Greater Anglia. Let's go to Hackney Central now. Second pink reader of the day.
And now I'm heading to Stratford, but this time it's on a Class 378, not the 710. Stratford is of course an area that was heavily built up in anticipation of the 2012 Olympic Games in London, and ever since, the Olympic Stadium has been converted into a football stadium that is now being used by West Ham, and is considered one of the most hated stadiums in the entire country. Being originally an athletic stadium, the seats are much further from the pitch than you would expect at a normal football ground.
Oh, Stratford. Oh, Stratford. Sometimes I love you. Sometimes I absolutely hate you. Alright, here we are. London Stadium, West Ham's home. one of the most hated stadiums in the world, some might say. Seats are so far away from the ground, but this season might be for the better that the fans can't see the terrible play that's going on. Last time I was here, West Ham won a European trophy, and now they seem to be struggling just to stay up. So let's give the London Stadium a trainability score. So Stratford, obviously, amazing station, lots of different connections from all across London. There's even a freight train. First time I've seen a freight train in London. And just over there in the distance, I think that's a Greater Anglia. But yeah, the station is a little bit far away and does require going through Westfield, which can be a little bit annoying, but you can't really complain about the number of connections it has. And there's a couple of stations like Hackney Wick and Putney Mill Lane that can be used to avoid Stratford itself. So I think West Ham will get an 8 out of 10. But if supporting losing teams is what you like, then it's time for this channel's first ever episode of Choo Choo Choo.
This actually was my first ever time having Pret in London, and I have to say, it wasn't that bad. With North and East London complete, I need to start heading west. So I decided to take the Jubilee line just one stop down to West Ham, where I then go on the District line. This probably was a mistake in hindsight, because I could have just stayed on the Jubilee line to Westminster, which would have been quicker. This video was filmed way back in September, and at the time I was still kind of getting oriented around, and I didn't realize just how slow the District line was. Eventually though, with the rain pouring down, I made it to Earl's Court, where I had to change to a District line service towards Wimbledon, because the one I had gotten on before was going on a different branch. I didn't know it at the time, but what I just filmed there was the southern service from Croydon to Watford. And here is Fulham Broadway, the station that is nearest to not Fulham, but Chelsea.
Alright, at long last we've arrived at another stadium, just as it's starting to pick up some rain a little bit.
Once you work your way through the shopping centre, you find yourself just a couple minutes away from Stamford Bridge, which is of course Chelsea's much maligned home ground. Well, it's not that bad of a stadium, but owners past and present have had thoughts of rebuilding it, potentially even rotating it 90 degrees. But the railways around the stadium do make it a little bit difficult to do that. And as such, Chelsea sees lower attendance than the other so-called Big Six Premier League clubs.
So there's the stadium entrance, and there's the tube entrance. Very, very close. So I think for trainability, we have to give this a pretty high score. I mean, it's closer than Stratford was, and if we gave that an 8, well, that was also largely because of that having a lot of lines. So I was going to give Chelsea an 8 because having to go through the mall can be a little bit annoying, but I'm actually going to upgrade it to a 9 because there's this entrance over here that is accessible on match days, which avoids you having to go through the mall, which honestly, that's pretty incredible. But I would show more of the stadium, though I am already taking much longer on this than I thought I would, so let's just go to the next ground.
By this time, the District line was getting very busy, and it had a disruption earlier, so this train was full to the brim of people coming home from work and school, so I decided to wait for one more train, which I took down 2 stops to Putney Bridge.
Alright, this is pretty neat. I just got off at Putney Bridge, and I think this is Putney Bridge itself. This is where the District line trains run, and about a 15-minute walk that way is Craven Cottage, which is Fulham's home. They do have a home game tonight, so I think some of their crowds have already begun to assemble. So yeah, normally the walkway along the riverbank is the quickest way to get to the stadium, but as you saw, that was closed today, so it makes already what's like a 20-minute walk even longer. Like, I'm already 25 minutes since I got out of the station, and I'm still only about halfway to the stadium. That's how lost I got at the beginning.
This right here is a walk in a park, but getting to Craven Cottage was anything but that. At last though, I made it to London's so-called original football club, widely considered one of the poshest clubs in the city. Their season tickets are notoriously expensive, but this stadium is quite iconic as one of its stands sits right on the banks of the river.
Alright, so the time is 4:40 now. I'm thinking now I'm gonna get a bus that will help me get to the train station to get to Brentford. And then I'll probably do Brentford very quickly. And if I get lucky with the timings, that's the 4:30. I would have wanted that one.
So giving Fulham a score was a bit tricky because on the one hand, it's pretty far for a stadium in London, but also it is in London, so like you're never really that far. Like a 15-minute walk from a station with trains every 5 minutes seems like a luxury in most other places that we're gonna go later in the series. But ultimately, with the context of it being in London, I think we unfortunately have to give the Cottagers a pretty low score, which is going to be 4 out of 10. It's harsh, but I don't know.
Alright, I'm at Putney Station. It's a pretty nice station right on the high street of Putney. I'm going to be getting the next train over to Kew Bridge to get me to Brentford Stadium. But this is right in the peak hour, and we're going right in the direction of peak travel, so I don't think I'm going to get a seat, but hopefully we'll find out.
This ride on Southwestern uses what is known as the Hounslow Loop line, which I will be giving a dedicated video very soon. As predicted though, I couldn't find a seat, except for the middle seats. Yeah, unfortunately this train's in a 2-3 configuration. Not to worry though, I found the train really quiet and smooth. For all you nerds out there, this is a Class 450 Siemens Desiro, and amenities include luggage racks, toilets, and retractable tray tables. But I couldn't use any of them because I didn't want to sit in a middle seat. Here at Kew Bridge, which is where I got off, you can actually see Brentford Stadium from the platform, which is a good start.
Alright, so here at Kew Bridge I have good news and bad news. The good news is the stadium is actually visible from the platform, which is a first. But the bad news is that in one final act of trolling from the train gods, the trains in the other direction here at Kew Bridge, that's what the station's called, the trains back are just so bad that the next useful train doesn't actually arrive here for 20 minutes. But while there aren't any useful trains, might as well explore the stadium area a little more. This is one of the smallest stadiums that we're going to visit in this series, but it's in a pretty urban environment, at least in its immediate surroundings. There's the club shop, and there's one of the entrances. See, at the time of recording, it's been a tough start to the season for Brentford, but I have faith that they'll bounce back, get themselves together again, and stay up.
For Brentford's trainability, I gave it a 6 out of 10. The line I rode in has a 30-minute off-peak frequency, which isn't great, but Gunnersbury is also an option which has solid service from both the district and overground. What holds it back though is that it's not that close, requiring a 15-minute walk. And with that, this is the end of match day 1 of the Railway Premier League, and here's what the trainability table is looking like so far. I would have liked to go to Crystal Palace as well, so I could say that I did all 7 London clubs in one day, but unfortunately, with delays piling up, I didn't have time to go there. So yeah, for all you Palace fans out there, I'm sorry. But to make up for it, episode 2 will start with you guys. But in the meantime, I have plenty of other videos coming out, so make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss any sort of content like this. See you later.